Hello YouTube, and welcome again to my channel. So I decided I would make another video talking about what it was like to be an elder as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. My first video gave an overview, but I figured now I would share some experiences. So a lot happened while I was an elder, but that probably is true for anybody. The hall I was in was relatively quiet. There weren't a whole lot of problems, except for on the body of elders itself. There were individuals who consistently wanted to make people do things their way. They wanted to have their way on matters, and they didn't really care about whether their way coincided with scriptural direction from the governing body, or whatever. All they cared about was having their way. And that really made it challenging at times to be an elder. In fact, the brother who was presiding overseer when I was appointed, him and I got along very well because we both had a similar mindset. But eventually it got too much for him to deal with the body of elders, because I always tried to take care of those brothers. I tried to bring them back into line and see if we could actually have a body of elders that would shepherd the sheep instead of beating the sheep in some cases. But that being said, if you're actually following the rules of the governing body, to some extent you are beating the sheep regardless of whether you're imposing your will on them. But I just wanted to stop these brothers from imposing their will on others beyond and above that which was prescribed in writing. And my efforts to do this did not always work, and it caused problems. Eventually the brother, as I was about to say, who became the coordinator, who was the presiding overseer, he ended up going to a different congregation. At this time I was already the secretary. I believe at that time I was also still the youngest brother on the body, by a good stretch. The brothers though decided that they wanted to have me as a coordinator, and I knew what I was in for, and I didn't want the job. But the reason why they wanted me to be the coordinator is because they kind of figured that they could just do whatever they wanted, having a young guy coordinate the body of elders. So anyways, I ended up taking the job, and I coordinated the body for a couple of years. And I oftentimes felt like I was protecting the sheep from some of the shepherds. And it took a lot of effort. And it really wore me down quite a bit, because I didn't feel like the brothers were helping me out all that much. Elders' meetings would be contentious. There would be disagreements. Not necessarily over scriptural things, but just over what people wanted to do. In fact, scriptural matters weren't that important to some individuals. They really weren't driven by what was in the scriptures. I always tried to be driven by what I thought was in the scriptures. In retrospect, though, that's subjective. So anyways, our elders' meetings were oftentimes contentious. There would be arguments, and a number of times we would stop and say a prayer to get Jehovah's Spirit back over the arrangement. At least that's what we were told to do, and we did it, and it would quiet down for 5 or 10 minutes, then we would be arguing again. So anyways, that was the situation. It was extremely stressful to me. Somewhere around that point I began to develop an anxiety issue, which I still carry to this day. It's gotten worse since then for other reasons. But anyways, I began to be anxious because I determined that the brother who was the biggest offender, he was a brother who liked getting revenge on people. He would get them back if he found a way. And I was always a little bit nervous and afraid of what he was going to try to do to me. It was just the general paranoia that surrounded being in that situation. So anyways, there were times when this brother tried to insert himself in judicial cases and where he wasn't sitting on the committee. He tried to impose arbitrary rules on the body that were neither scriptural nor advocated by instruction that we had in print in the literature or from the governing body. And that's just the way it went. So several times when I coordinated that body, I had to have sections on the meeting on getting along as a body. And when it finally got to the point where the body was actually functional and operating the way that we were supposed to, according to the governing body's description anyway, well, that brother felt like he wasn't a part of it. So that's because his main purpose, he wanted to have lots of meetings because he liked to micromanage by imposing his will on people. And instead of actually doing anything, all he ever wanted to do was get together and talk about it and convince other people that his idea was right. And so he actually did very little in the congregation outside of causing trouble on the body of elders. And I was never able to address this situation. And I would have been perfectly happy if he just stopped making trouble. But that wasn't going to happen with this particular person. And I thought that some of his actions, because he had a reputation that extended for well over a decade, possibly two, of being that type of individual, of going beyond his authority and imposing things on people. But from some of the accounts I've heard on YouTube, it seems like that's actually par for the course. Anyways, that same individual, there was something that came up that our congregation was looking into, where we were going to need to purchase a good or service, or there's something expensive. I'll put it at that. I won't be specific. But this brother found a contact that was willing to help us with this particular matter. But that contact would have profited quite handsomely off that transaction. In fact, it would have been a 5-figure profit for them at the expense of the congregation. So anyways, it was advocated that we move forward with this individual that was going to be making this profit, and this particular thing was sold to us as having been worth what we would have paid for it. So we went through the process. We thought we did things right. We voted on it. The congregation said yes, but shortly thereafter, we presented things and voted on them in one night. Shortly thereafter, it turned out that a number of people were dissatisfied with the decision, and it turned out the proper procedure was to present something and then wait a week to decide on it. So anyways, we had used the wrong procedure. This brother put the high-pressure sales tactic on us, and we listened to him and decided to move forward. But then when the dissent arose, we got back together and we decided that it actually wasn't worth what we would be paying for it, and that 5-figure profit that individual/company would be making on the congregation was just money that was going directly into their pocket. The thing being provided was not worth that extra value that they would be getting for it. So anyways, when we decided to back out, the brother tried to get us to find out who was not in favor and convince them of why it was a good idea. We didn't do that. But that brother was later seen using things from that individual that would have been profiting to such a high extent off the congregation. So there was some, and on top of this, that brother was going to utilize that individual/company for other business things. So there was some type of relationship there. It looked a lot like the brother in question would be benefiting from some of that sizable profit, but nothing could ever be proved, so nothing ever happened there. But this is just the type of thing that went on. And some of things like that you could even bring to the attention of higher ups, be they circuit overseers or district overseers or what have you, and oftentimes they would just get swept under the carpet. And why is that? Well, the brother involved he was a company man, I guess you could say. He did a lot for Bethel, he had connections, and I guess they appreciated what he did. So when he did things, they tended to look the other way. So that was something that always bothered me a great deal when I was an elder, because I really felt that individuals like that should not be serving, because he didn't seem to be out for the benefit of the congregation or to help anybody. In his own mind, he probably was. I don't know. It's not up to me to read his heart. But the stuff he did looked extremely shady. It was very oftentimes self-serving, self-centered, and it just looked like he was trying to be in charge, trying to run other people's lives. So I guess that fits the description, though, of many elders. I've worked with some of both. Some I really don't understand how they can be like that, but now that I've looked at it again, I kind of do. But I'm telling you, as an elder, I experienced those things as well. So I've dealt with strong-willed individuals who had their own viewpoints on how things should be done, and that's kind of the way it went. Now, elders also, another big job that elders have that I did not discuss last time was shepherding the flock. But what really is shepherding the flock as Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned? Well, basically, what a shepherd of the flock will do is try to get people motivated to go to all the meetings, to participate at the meetings, and to be actively involved in the field service. And also elders will try to help people improve their field service. That is to place more literature, have more return visits, and if you don't know what a return visit is, that's when you've talked to somebody and they seem interested, so you go back and you talk to them again. And in your little report that goes to the branch, every time you make one of those visits, you get to record that. So every time, if a witness visits you and they visit you regularly, every time they do, they're marking off a slot on their report card, if you will, that they're submitting, and that gets them status. Theoretically, in their mind, the reason they're doing it is to save your life, but they're being measured on how they perform in that regard. And the job of the elders is to bring up everybody's performance on that little card and to get them to all the meetings. And occasionally, too, people will have problems that you'll try to help them out with. And this happened. There were individuals that had situations in their life, and I, at the time, along with others, tried to help them in a way that I actually thought was beneficial. But unfortunately, anytime anything came up in anybody's life, the solution was always prayer, study, meeting attendance, field service. If you get more involved in a spiritual routine, your life will get better. Or if it doesn't get better, you will be helped to endure the trials you are going through because you are being strengthened spiritually. That was always the solution. More spiritual activity was the solution to any problem. And when someone slowed down in their spiritual activity, you always assumed that they stopped praying, maybe their meeting attendance was falling off, and so on and so forth. So any time there was a hiccup in someone's spiritual activity, the first thing that would come to the mind of an elder is that there's some spiritual weakness there that needs to be helped. So I was very involved with doing that. I always tried to encourage people from the platform or wherever to get out and service more, and I tried to lead by example. But that being said, I will be honest, I did not really enjoy the ministry. You're going door to door and talking to people who don't want to see you, who don't want you there, and you think your beliefs are stupid. And well, now I know why. And the funny thing about that is, as witnesses, we always took pride in ways that we would try to get in touch with people. For example, there were places where you weren't supposed to go, no soliciting signs and whatnot, but you would always use the excuse, oh, well, we're not selling anything. And technically you weren't, but by the real definition of soliciting, you were in fact soliciting. Soliciting can just be getting people to agree with your idea, and that basically is what Jehovah's Witnesses did. So they chose one definition of a word and ignored it in order to do whatever they wanted to do. And that's typically the way Jehovah's Witnesses are. They define things in their own terms, and they act accordingly. And when other people do that, they'll call them out as hypocrites, but they have no problems with doing that themselves. So that's basically the life, or that's another part of being an elder. Your job really is to be basically a cheerleader for activities that are advocated by the organization. And that's what I did. And of course, as an elder, you get to go around and talk in different congregations, and I did that, and I actually enjoyed it. Not to say I was the greatest speaker known to man, as you can probably tell if you're listening to my videos, but it was something I did, I enjoyed it, and I liked meeting people. And that was another part of the job. But there was always a lot of work involved, preparing for those discourses. And those discourses are actually outlines that are provided by the society. Your job is never to write the talk. It is to flesh out the outline, to make sure you are bringing out the key points that the society has put in those outlines. And there's a number of those outlines. By now it's probably around 180. Every year they come up with a few more. But once you get a couple of those outlines, you realize there's really only a couple of basic themes to public talks, and most are just repeats. So that's the way public talks work. And that's why they're all so boring, because the vast majority of them are all about the same thing. So anyways, that's a little bit more of what it's like to be an elder. So I thank you for listening. Talk to you next time.